Welcome to Book Backstory. My name is Carla Brandenburg, and I'm an award-winning author of romantic suspense and paranormal novels. This podcast is a walk along my journey. I plan to interview some of my favorite authors, share with you some of the things that get me excited to write a book, and the stumbling blocks during the process. First, I'm excited to tell you about my new release, Enchanted Memories, which is the 5th book in the Hillendale series. There's a new witch in town. Madeline is sassy, brassy, and struggling after a vision that nearly killed her. To celebrate the new book, I'm doing something a little different today and talking with the reader. Let me introduce my good buddy Bobby, someone who is as excited about my books as I am. Yeah, she might be a little biased.
Thank you so much, Carla. I'm glad to be here today.
Now, Bobby, I know you don't read that much. Can you tell me what motivated you to pick up my Hillendale series to read?
Well, when we went to lunch the other day, I think it was last week, we went to Pepe's, and you were talking about your struggles with the 5th book of Hillendale, and that sparked my interest to start reading it. I had already read The Family Alchemy about a year ago, but I wanted to read the rest of it and be up to date before your 5th book came out.
Now, the reason I was talking about this book with Bobby is because I was getting her input on one of the stars of the 5th book, which is Zeus. He's a canine, a German Shepherd, and Bobby had dogs when she was growing up. In fact, she had a German Shepherd.
Yes, I did. He was a monster, but we won't get into that because I'm not sure how Carla portrayed Zeus. So until I read it, I'll let her take that one.
Zeus is a very lovable dog. I think you'll like him. He's a sniffer dog, so he's not an attack dog. He doesn't chase perpetrators. He's a sniffer dog, and Madeline, who is the main character in book 5, is afraid of dogs. And so when she sees Zeus for the first time, she's scared to death. He's an attack dog and backs away from him. But one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is to get that personality read on German Shepherds, because as I understand it, while they may be more protective, they are also very affectionate dogs.
Yeah, ours was very affectionate with the family, but any outsiders, I was surprised that the dog lunged at one of my, I thought boyfriends, but I never saw him again after the one visit he made to the house. And our dog, Hans, at the time lunged for his throat. So that told me, I guess he's not as dumb as I thought he was.
Well, and that fits in with what I needed from my canine, is that he was protective and caring for his handler and for the people that he cares about, but he can also be vicious if the situation calls for it. And there is a situation in the book where it calls for it. So the German Shepherd was a perfect choice. So I'm going to go back through this series a little bit, since you said you read Family Alchemy a year ago, and I know that you recently have more time to read books, and I'm really thrilled that you decided to pick up the rest of them. And you said, based on our discussion about book 5 and the dog and some of the things that I was running across. So I'm curious about how you found Unintended Consequences, which is where Nora disappears to the Indian reservation.
Yes. That was just incredible. I just loved that whole storyline, and there were so many surprises too. And I love, though, that you bring family into your books, because that's just so important, I think, to most people, and just to hear about other people's stories, whether fictional or not. It just draws me in to just keep reading, because it's not my story, but it's somebody else's, and it's just always intriguing.
Yeah, Bryn has kind of a troubled family life, and basically the family that she grew up with doesn't care about her. She was orphaned at a young age and sent to live with her aunt and uncle. And in Family Alchemy, she discovers an aunt that she didn't know she had. And in her aunt, she finds the family that she's been missing. So in book 2, the aunt kind of finds herself. And I think the thing that I enjoyed about book two was exploring more of the Native American heritage. I actually worked with a Native American critique partner for that one. And when I finished it, and I asked her if she would look at the whole for me, because we'd been working scene by scene, she actually recommended me to another person who was both Native American and Wiccan. And I had that person read it for sensitivity because I wanted to make sure I didn't get anything wrong, especially in the times that we're living in now. I didn't want to offend anybody, and I was really excited when my sensitivity reader came back with, "You got everything right," she says, and she loved the solstice ceremony, which was particularly one of the points I wanted to make sure I got right.
Yeah, I loved that part, and that their special talents, Nora and Bryn, it came from Earth, Wind, and Fire, and how that's described with the solstice and that ceremony. It was just so incredibly well done.
Thank you. I found it, like I said, I thought it was fun to write and fun to research. And I tapped on some of my, again, Native American friends to get impressions or feelings. And I more than anything, I wanted to make sure I got it right. So I found that the most interesting part of that book. Along with, and now I'm going to mention, I had a reviewer come through who'd read the series, who mentioned Kyle, and I have to tell you, because the series wasn't meant to be romantic per se, but Kyle was meant to be Bryn's romantic interest. I needed to hold him off a little bit so that he could go on through the series, and I was kind of surprised myself at the situations as they presented themselves. And one of my reviewers, like I said, who'd read the series, had said when she got to book 4, how she didn't really like Kyle through most of the series, and so she was actually happy in book 4 when, and here's a spoiler alert, Bryn made another choice.
That did come as a very big surprise to me, because I just thought, that they were destined to be together. But as the story goes on, he is a little bit overprotective, and that seemed to drive Bryn a little nutty on occasion. So, and I could kind of see, if you're very independent, or you're trying to be independent, which Bryn is, and trying to form her own life, that would be cumbersome to her.
Yeah. Well, and that was the whole problem, is that because she had been basically taking care of herself from a very early age and learned not to be dependent on somebody, to have somebody who was trying to direct her life, to his defense, he was trying to be helpful, but he had a different idea of helpful than she did. And that was one of the trickiest parts of writing the book. When I realized in book 4 that they weren't going to make it, I had started out the book one way and realized that by the end of the book they weren't going to make it together. I actually had to go back and change some of what I'd written so that people would get the idea early on and be prepared for the shift.
And that they did quite cleverly, only I didn't catch on until I'm like, oh my goodness, what just happened? And again, I don't want to give it away, because the twist was, outstanding, and I liked the way it went. So, again, I just, it just worked. It just all worked and came together. And it just amazes me how difficult, I can't even write one book, let alone a series. So just to have the story keep going, and how their lives evolve and new characters are introduced, it's amazing to me. Yeah. And I can't thank you enough for your vision and your creativity.
Thank you. It's I love the fact, or I love being able to share all of that with people, and when they resonate, when it resonates with somebody, it's especially gratifying. And yeah, the reviewer that I'd mentioned, when book 4 takes that unexpected twist, she said, "I didn't see that coming, and I'm so glad that it did." Because again, she didn't care much for Kyle, so I got a kick out of that, because it's like, yeah, he was getting on my nerves too, and that was part of the reason that he had to move on.
Yeah, Kyle was beginning to annoy me also, so you did the right thing.
Well, with that being said, my editor had mentioned that he deserves his happily ever after. So in book 5, even though I wouldn't call it a happily ever after, he gets somebody who understands him a little bit better, and someone he can relate to a little bit better. So I had to redeem him a little bit, so that people didn't just go, well, good, we got rid of that bed of rubbish. So, and in Hidden Grimoire, that's something else that, the thing that sticks out with me about that book is, after my editor had read it, she said, "Ooh, I can't wait to read more about the creepy kid."
Georgia, right?
Georgia, yes.
I liked her.
She was a cute little girl, and there's you have to be careful when you're writing about children, kind of like Firestarter with Stephen King. But I didn't feel comfortable pursuing Georgia in the subsequent book, because I felt like she needed to grow up a little bit first. Plus, there was the incident that happened with her that leaves the reader wondering if what happened was going to be permanent or maybe just temporary. And I left it that way so that I could pursue that storyline. But then you'll find out more when you read book 4 about what happens there. But I still am trying to decide whether or not to pursue Georgia's book. But that was the thing that stood out to my editor in that book, The Hidden Grimoire.
Yeah, I love that one. I like the way the book kept appearing and disappearing, and it was open to certain pages per se, and instructions on what needed to be made or done, or again, I don't want to give away too much, but it's just so intriguing, all of it, all of the time. I think I read those 3 books in a little over a week, which is pretty fast for me, because I'm not normally reading a lot. So, it kept my interest because I continued so quickly with it.
Well, that's the goal.
Yeah. And wanted to get to the next. So what happens next?
Yeah, and then Interrupted Magic. I know you told me that you knew from the title what was going to happen.
Yep.
And I had somebody else who'd read it. I'm trying to think if it was a beta reader who said, "Oh, I didn't see that coming." So I found it interesting that you knew right away before you even started the book what was going to happen.
Yeah, and I think it helped because I read the 3 in a row, because I went right into the 4th book, and again, don't want to give it away, but I picked it up right away of what Interrupted Magic meant, based on, was it Leanne?
Yeah.
The Leanne that she met early on. Or I forget which book it was now.
That was in Hidden Grimoire, yeah.
Yeah. But I did also like what hit home, and I think the 3, unintended consequences, The Hidden Grimoire and Interrupted Magic, is that do no harm was mentioned quite a bit, and that just really hit home to me, that anybody with special gifts that knows, that can control things more so than your average human, that first always remembers to do no harm. And that I thought was an awesome, sentiment in the book. I still remember it now. It might not be much, but that was important to me.
that's kind of one of the tenets, because as I was researching the books, I was researching Wiccan beliefs, and that's one of the Wiccan beliefs. In fact, that's more or less how they apply their magic. The first do no harm, and then the unintended consequences, I think, is one of my own. It's like, if you do magic on purpose, be prepared for it to backfire.
Yeah.
So magic called unintentionally can produce unintended consequences. So that was probably one of the rules that I made up. But in another rule, oh gosh, now I'm not going to remember what that rule is. But the other rule is harm set forth comes back threefold. That's another of the Wiccan rules. So I did adopt their rules to apply to the witches, since it's more commonly known. But the unintended consequences was the one rule that I applied that, to my knowledge, does not exist.
Yeah, I like that. I also took it as unintended meanings. You didn't intentionally mean to do it, but it happened in a bad way.
Yeah.
The results were not good.
Yeah. And we run into that a little bit in book 5, in that most of what Madeline does is intentional, but it's like, do what you will, but cause no harm. And I think that's the rule that she abides by the most. Is we find out in Interrupted Magic that she casts spells via a website. So, and you can actually find that if you go online. You can find witches who do their work via website. You can send them a request for a spell and send them money, and they do a spell for you. And that's kind of what Madeline does. So she does practice magic intentionally, but she uses discretion so that none of it comes back to haunt her. And obviously that isn't always the case. There's always going to be some snafu. But
so if I ask somebody to put a spell on me to win the lotto, it's going to happen?
Well, I wouldn't guarantee that, but it's always a possible. You can give it a try. So, yeah, I'm really excited for readers to read this next installment now, and I'm trying to decide that if I've wrapped up enough loose ends that I can call this series complete, or if I should pursue Georgia, but I think that may be a decision for a later time. I don't know. Do you want to read a story about Georgia and Wesley?
You know what? Whatever you write, I'm happy with so far. And I'm so glad that I'm retired and I have time to read these wonderful books. They're just outstanding. I can't say enough about them. And I'm a tough one for reading books. I just never have, taken, unless I had to in school, that I had to and do a report on it. I was just not a reader. So you getting me to read is something I can't say enough.
And that's the goal every author strives for. So that really is gratifying. And I know you mentioned to me as we were talking that you started reading my epitaph stories. So what prompted you to pick those up?
I have. Well, I like the Hillendale series so much that I go, I got to get going and read the rest of her stuff. I'm not caught up at all. I need to. And the stories are so human, and you can see them happening to people, even if they're fictional. It's just it's exciting for me to read another story that's not my own, because my own is not all that exciting. Let me tell you. So it's really inexpensive entertainment. And for it to be done so well, and again, I can't say enough about how well everything's written that you do, that I just want to continue reading all that you've done so far.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. So I can't wait to hear what you think of all the Epitaphs books.
I am gonna start. I've got them downloaded, so I'm ready to go. But thanks for the tip today in person on what to read first, so that I keep all the characters straight, and it's what I want to do.
Well, and that tip was that the Epitaphs books all stand alone, so you don't really need to read them in any particular order. Although I recommended that she read Epitaph first, so she gets the basis, the starting point for the rest of the books. But even that, I suppose it doesn't make so much of a difference if you read it out of order. But that would be my recommendation, is to start there. And Epitaph is first in series free. So that's an easy pickup.
Nice. So do it, people.
So I think that's all I've got for today. Anything you want to add?
No, just keep on doing what you're doing. We got to get your story and all your books out there, and for people to start buying them. That's all I can recommend.
Thanks for sitting with me, Bobby, today. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, as always.
Wonderful to talk to you too, buddy.